Hey everyone, and welcome to an NHL edition of Grinderslive. I'll be your host, Taylor Ezel, also known as Ezel MT. And today I'm joined by Paul Arrington. You know him as Boggs Light. Paul, how's it going today?
Good. It's been a long time since we've done one of these shows. It's about damn time. Had to shake off some of the cobwebs from my camera up here.
Yes, I had to do the same. I was thinking, I think it's been since Toronto live final since we've seen each other in person. Does that seem right?
Yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah, well, that was the highlight of my Nhl Dfs, so it's been downhill since then. So good deal. Got a lot to get into today. Looking forward to breaking down the slate. As you all might have guessed, we're bringing back Nhl Dfs to the Rotogrinders YouTube channel every Tuesday and Thursday around 3 p.m. You can tune in live or catch us after for a full breakdown of that day's hockey slate. As always, if you have any questions for us, we'll be in the live stream chat answering any questions you might have. There's also the NHL Discord channel that you should check out for up-to-the-minute updates throughout lock. For those who may play primarily NBA, NHL doesn't have quite the last minute, scratches, things of that sort, but you'll definitely want to be tuned in up through lock to make sure that your lineups are up to date. Also check out Scores and Odds, which is the #1 place for all things sports betting. I do write-ups and analysis over there for NHL. We've got a ton of other great content. It's a big PGA week this week with the players coming up. So Noto and company will be writing up PGA content there. So check out scoresandodds.com today for more info. All right, so we've got 11 games to break down here. Got a nice large slate, typical for a Tuesday night. So we're going to go game by game, focusing primarily on DK pricing. However, we will try to point out any relevant FanDuel specific plays or values as applicable. Then at the end, we'll go through goalies that we like and dislike, and then end with favorite stacks time allocated. So let's get into it. Let's start with Colorado taking on New Jersey. All these odds will be from scoresandodds.com. So I'll go through each game and mention the over/under and then also who's favored. In this one, we have the Avalanche as a 215 favorite with a 6.5 over/under. Starting with the Avalanche, one of the best teams in the NHL, coming off of a thriller last night where it was 5-4. If you were an under better going into the third period, you probably felt great. And then the Avs scored 4 goals in 4 minutes and crushed that under. So sorry if you did have the under there. But I mean, that's what the Avalanche are capable of. I mean, they're one of the more explosive teams. You can see in lineup HQ, we've got Nathan MacKinnon as the second highest projected raw points and tied for the highest on projected ownership. Boggs, what do you like, dislike on the Avalanche side of the ice?
Well, I'd say he really got to like the Avs here. I mean, despite them being on a back-to-back, it is that time of the year, I will say, where, a lot of these teams are playing several games and short few amount of nights. And, we're getting past the halfway point of the year, approaching the trade deadline. So back-to-backs do matter, but I mean, still, it's really hard not to like Colorado, especially that top power play unit here in this game. There are some, I guess, if I'm not mistaken, Burakovsky got a little banged up in that game last night. So there are a few question marks, but, regardless, focusing on MacKinnon, Rantanen, it's really hard to go wrong here in this spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the only note I had as well was the back-to-back. I'd file that as a minor concern. I think we'll get to the Maple Leafs here in a little bit. Similar story with them, high projected team total, only concern being back-to-back. But I'm with you. These players are young. They're fully capable of handling heavy loads. So minor tick down. You mentioned Burakovsky, assuming he plays, he's on the number one line at even strength. He's not on the power play, but he's still a decent value. And then you nailed it. I mean, McKinnon and Rantanen are definitely the priorities with Cale Makar if you are looking to pay up at defenseman. What about on the other side? Any interest in the Devils? I know they're pretty big underdogs at home. Any interest on that side?
Well, you know, this game could surprisingly kind of go back and forth. You know, we know the Devils can shoot the puck. The problem I always have with them is you know, outside of, you know, Jesper Bratt, it's really kind of hard to narrow down where that scoring is going to come from. So I'm not necessarily particular about matchups in this one, but if there's anyone, it's probably be just Jesper Bratt more as a one-off, because I think we're also unsure of the status of Hischier tonight.
Yeah, I agree. The Devils are tough because they don't correlate particularly well in the power play. Really, Jack Hughes and Hischier are two of the priorities, but they're obviously centering different lines. And then you've got Bratt, as you mentioned. So I agree. I think you could throw some darts there. If Hischier's out, you know, that will open up a little bit of value. I don't know if you have a thought as to who may get bumped up to the number one power play. I feel like it could be a number of, you know, players there. So I agree. I think they could be a little bit sneaky as a contrarian stack just because they are such a huge underdog.
Yep, that's about it. That's all I got there. I mean, you can always, you know, just take a Jesper Bratt, pair him with a, you know, Dougie Hamilton or, you know, Severson, since he's been on that top power play. But because that's really kind of Colorado's one, I guess, if you could poke a hole in them, their Achilles heel, they, you know, penalty kill. That was more so earlier in the year, but yeah, it's just really tough to, you know, to really kind of go all, you know, all in with the stack from New Jersey.
Yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to mention. Dougie Hamilton, his usage since returning from injury has been surprisingly low. You mentioned he's no longer on the number one power play. He's really not getting that heavy of a minutes at even strength as well. So at 6,600, that's a tough ask. I think Severson, a little bit better play, probably limited upside. So interesting to see if that'll continue as the year progresses. But Hamilton's usage has definitely been down. All right, let's move on to Vegas taking on the Flyers in Philadelphia. Vegas is listed as a 180 favorite. It's actually opened at 150, which did seem a little lean. It's quickly moved to 180, which feels like a slightly more accurate number. 6-goal over under here. Vegas is starting to get a little healthier. They've got Pacioretty, they've got Eichel, Stone and Alec Martinez are still out, but this team still has plenty of weapons. Take me through what you like on the Vegas side.
Yeah, it's really the top six for me. You could, you know, go with both lines. Obviously, you know, you want to, you know, probably start with Eichel, Pacioretty. They're on the top power play unit. And, you know, Philly without Couturier is really, even with him early in the year, has not really been a team I've been afraid of. So I like both top six. If you're looking for, you know, a little bit of value, I know they haven't been great this year, but that second line with Marchessault, Carlson, Smith, you know, they're probably as cheap as they've really ever been. And it's only a matter of time before they get things going.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. I think Jonathan Marchessault is interesting, and he's starting to heat up. I saw he's got goals in 4 of his last 5 games and is really putting the puck on net, which he's fully capable of, especially with Carlson centering. At times, he's a pass first guy. So I agree. If you're wanting to go with more of a power play stack, you could hit up Eichel, Pacioretty, and Marchessault. That sort of gives you a blend of that top 6. Dadonov is now dropped to the 4th line. He got time on the first line the other day, and he's now on the 4th line. He is on power play 1, but I'm not sure if I can pull the trigger there. He's really been a huge disappointment this season so far.
Yeah, and he's, you know, he's still not like coming in as cheap as, you know, some of these other guys we'll get to in this game. So yeah, I would leave him off. Really just focus on Eichel, Pacioretty, Theodore, and then on the flip side, that whole trio of Carlson, Marchessault, Smith, and then you could pair them with Pietrangelo to get some of that power play exposure. But yeah, really, I mean, you could play Nick Roy because he's cheap, but he's not a guy that, you know, I'm particularly that high on in this one. It would really just be the focus of Eichel and Pacioretty.
What about Philly? I know it's been a lost season for them at this point. You mentioned Couturier is out for the year. Longtime Nashville Predator Ryan Ellis has not been able to be on the ice. I know that's been a letdown for their kind of free agent pickup. Anything stand out on the Philly side here?
Not really. Vegas, they've really kind of clamped down. Early in the year, they were giving up tons of scoring chances, and it's really because they're missing half their lineup. But they've really kind of clamped down. They're an elite team, and I don't think they're not gonna be messing around here. At this point in the season, and sure, you could take a flyer on Giroux, Konechny, but it's flyer. Just, it's yeah, that was unintended. But yeah, it's just this team I've been off all season long, and that's probably been a good thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, their lines always seem to be in a blender. They don't correlate particularly well in the power play, so you're not getting a whole lot of that. So I agree. On a slate this large, I think they're probably largely a scratch off for me. All right, let's move on to the Panthers at the Penguins. This is a great matchup for real life purposes. Two good teams with, I would say Stanley Cup aspirations here. Florida had another blowout win last night against the Sabres. And when they're on, they seem to do that. I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but I would imagine they're top 2 or 3 in both goals scored and goal differential, because when they win, they seem to pour on, 6, 7, 8 goals. I think the only challenge with them at times, even when they're pouring on goals, the production can be a little spread out. They'll get sort of random goals from, I think it was Hornquist had 1 or 2 last night. And so, I mean, does that worry you? What do you like? What do you dislike about the Panthers tonight?
Well, it's just, I think this is, from a real life hockey perspective, the game of the night. Not necessarily for me. It's definitely the one of the few games I'm having a real hard time figuring out. And I don't know if I need to pay up for, the top 2 lines from Florida. Obviously they're expensive. They're expensive for good reason, but, Pittsburgh has been a really strong team this year, home and on the road. But, with home ice, they're rested. I might lean Pittsburgh in this one. I think that either goalie could be in play. Obviously, the Florida went with the backup last night, and Bobrovsky should be in there. But then also Tristan Jarry is kind of interesting because we know Florida's going to shoot the puck still and shoot it a ton. And that's comes at a premium, especially on DraftKings. So I kind of like him at that moderate price tag. But as for, each side, I think that Barkov's going to get Crosby. Those 2 guys kind of cancel each other out. Malkin, still kind of waiting to see from him. But then if you're looking for some value on Pittsburgh, Carter, that third line is kind of intriguing because Florida, I think they've lost Lundell. He might be out tonight. And so that's how they could potentially attack Florida with the depth. But yeah, it's tough because you want to play the known names in this game. Crosby, Russ Gensel, but they're going to have a tough matchup if they're taking on the Barkov line. So again, outside of maybe on the power play, I don't really see them kind of breaking through in an 11-game slate. I think it's the game of the night, but outside of the goalies, I might just fade it.
Yeah, I'm with you for the most part. I think this one and then the Tampa Bay Winnipeg game that we'll get to in a little bit, or I feel similarly where I don't have a great feel one way or another. I could see either team coming out and winning. I could see it being a shootout. I could see it being low scoring. It's tough to know for these teams that are, good teams in real life. They have the ability to score, but they can also shut you down. So I agree with you. I believe I had Barkov as my, kind of fade of the night, just as far as pure points per dollar. I think he's up to check lineup HQ here on the salary side. Yeah, I mean, he's $9,000. So that's a tough ask when you've got Matthews and McKinnon sort of sandwiched in between there in the center. Yes, he could absolutely pay off. I know he's hot right now, but I'm with you. I think this one, I'll be excited to watch it. I don't know that I'll be heavily targeting from a fantasy perspective.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to a game where I do think there will be plenty of fantasy interest, especially on one side of the ice. talking about Seattle at the Maple Leafs. Toronto is a 255 favorite with a 6.5 over under, which tells you they have a massive implied team total, the highest of the night. Before we talk about the Maple Leafs, is there anything on the Seattle side that interests you?
Nah, man, it's just it was interesting, everyone, the prognosticators picking Seattle to make the playoffs, in their first year, kind of like how Vegas kind of surprised people. And you just look at the roster and it's tough.
Bad.
I mean,
It's really bad.
they've got a couple guys here or there, but especially with these lines they're trotting out right now, if they had, like loaded up Schwartz with Everly and McCann, maybe they could get an off chance shift against the third or fourth lines for Toronto. But this is all Toronto here. And I just don't think you need to mess around with Seattle in this one.
Yeah, I tried so hard. I was looking at it last night, and Toronto's defense and goaltending has been really bad, and they're on the second of a back-to-back. So I was trying so hard to make it work. And I mean, they are cheap. So if you wanted to go with, some of their first line or first power play, I get it, because they could be used as a secondary stack. You could even do a game stack if you wanted, but it is tough when you see some of those options that honestly they should be second and third line players, and they're first line just due to the lack of scoring depth on this team. One thing I'll point out, I mean, Mark Giordano, he's having a tough go of it, and I know he's still getting some decent usage, but I had to look him up last night. He's 38 and he's playing like he's 38. I'm not sure exactly why he's getting $7 million a year, but struggle all around for Seattle. Let's move to Toronto. I would assume you have plenty of interest on this side.
Absolutely. It's got to start with that top line. They've been fantastic all season long. I mean, Matthews really in particular, just when you think he can't get any better, he's seemingly does. And, he's really kind of carried Marner out of the doghouse of Leafs fans. Marner's been great here recently since getting back bumped up playing with him. And then, Bunting's been, a solid addition to that top line. Doesn't really get a whole lot of ice time, so I would understand, but he's still not that expensive. So if you've got the ability, I don't have any problem throwing Bunting in there. Seattle's, I don't believe, is a team that they have a terrible power play, but I'm not quite sure that, they're not taking that many penalties each game. So don't worry about the matchups. It's, if you want that power play for Toronto, by all means, load it up. But I don't have a problem playing Bunting in this game. And then the second line, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about, because I mean, Tavares, he's not even seeing as much ice time as we're used to. Still somewhat producing, but not really shooting that much, not getting that heavy ice time, but he's on that top power play. If Seattle is, finds themselves taking some extra penalties in this one, I could see a chance for him breaking through with Nylander on that second line.
Yeah, I've got lineup H2 pulled up, and I was just looking into the same thing of clearly Matthews, Marner, even Bunting are going to be, highly projected tonight. Tavares and Nylander, I mean, they are, for a points per dollar perspective, they do rate out pretty well. Similar. Tavares is down to 5.9 on DraftKings, which I would imagine is the cheapest he's been all season. He's normally more of a 7,000 type player, 7,500 even. So I get it. I mean, he's been really bad. However, if you expect the Maple Leafs to score 4, 5, 6 goals, you would expect he potentially is a part of that. So if you're looking to target this game, but maybe fade some of the Matthews and Marner ownership, which is terrifying, I do think there's some viability in going the Tavares Nylander route. And you nailed it with Bunting. I mean, the fact that he's still 4.7, that's just a misprice. Given his play over the last 2 or 3 weeks, he should be closer to 5,500, 6,000. He has 10 points in his last 5 games. He's, like you said, he's not getting a ton of ice time, but when you're playing with someone like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, the efficiency is just going to be high. And I think he's found a home. It seems like they've rotated through plenty of guys over the last few years, and he seems to have found a home on that first line, even though he doesn't get the power play time. So I think we are in agreement there that the Maple Leafs should smash tonight. Flipping over here to all of the games. We've got Matthews as the highest projected score by 3 points over anyone else. So we have him at 13%. I do expect that to be a little bit higher. I think that projection is probably just due to the fact that there's 11 games. I might expect it to be a little bit closer to the 15 to 20% range.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but still probably a lot less than it would be on a 5
Exactly.
gamer.
Yeah, no, if this was a 5-6 gamer, he'd be 40-50%. Whereas tonight in that, even upper teens, low 20s, I mean, I have no problem just eating that and moving on. So, all right, moving on. This is probably the ugliest game of the night from a real life perspective. We have Arizona taking on Detroit in battle of two terrible teams. Detroit opened at 150. They've moved up to 180. That seems a little high. I don't know that the the Red Wings should ever be minus 180 against anyone. But that's what Vegas is saying. It seems like when bad teams meet, it can really go one of two ways. It seems like it's either an ugly, like 2-1 type game, or if one of their teams scores early, it seems like it could be one of those, up and down 5-4. What do you like in this game overall, starting with the Arizona side?
I don't think we need to mention Arizona in this one, but there's nothing really to like from their standpoint, and including the goalie, because I'm actually kind of glad you're in agreement. And I'm kind of torn because I think that at least Detroit 1 is going to carry a lot of ownership today. And what I was struggling with is that, they don't ever really blow anyone out. And especially on home ice, they're better on home ice than they are on the road. They can be exposed on the road, but they're just not a team that ever lights anyone up. And Arizona, they're just an awful team all around, but they just seem to like slow the pace down as much as they can. So I'm curious what the ownership will ultimately be for Detroit 1. And then obviously, you've got Detroit 2 with Vrana making his season debut, coming in at minimum price on DraftKings. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of ownership concentrated for Detroit, but I don't know if they necessarily will get there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what I had in my notes is that the top line for the Red Wings, they've been surprisingly consistent, meaning they're going to put up a few points each night, but they've really shown very limited upside, which I was surprised at. I mean, even Dylan Larkin and some of the others, but Larkin, Bertuzzi, Raymond, to your point, I think they'll carry some good ownership, and yeah, they might have a fine night, but I don't think they're necessarily going to win you a GPP on their own. And who knows? They're playing Arizona, so it could absolutely.
And yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not off them completely. I just, at first, your eyes get wide when you see their price tags, you see the matchup, but then it's just always in the back of my mind, like, these guys going to win it for you. So I'm just hesitant. I'll say that, but if you need the savings, you can slot in Vrana. He'll probably be highly owned with the rest of them, but also be cautious for something like that, because there's no guarantee he's going to play, 17, 18 minutes in this one. They could try and ease him in, move some pieces around, but regardless, min price, you could do a lot worse. Some of these other guys.
Yeah, in lineup HQ, I've got it sorted by points per dollar, and he's by far the highest of the day. So I think a lot of people will leverage this projection or other sites, and he'll absolutely carry. We've got him at 9%. That's probably about right. I could see him getting into the low single digits. To your point, you could fade him. I don't expect him to come out and score a pair of goals or anything. So if he comes out and has an assist and 3 shots on goal or something, it's not going to kill you. But I mean, you can see he projects it over 4 points per dollar. There's no one else that's even above 3. So I get it. I'm fine if you just want to go one off with Vrana to build up elsewhere. But I am probably a little lower on Detroit than the rest of the field tonight.
Yeah, and the way I might play it is just to get Larkin, Fabry, Raymond, all of them, and also pay it for Mo Sider. He doesn't really, again, he's a kind of an assist machine, but he sees a ton of ice time, and he's having a strong rookie season. I'll be curious to see what that whole combination comes in with. I mean, it is affordable. It's not going to break the bank, but some people might be hesitant to pay $6,400 for Seider.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, right now we have Larkin, Vrana, Seider, Fabry, all in kind of that 7 to 10% range. So I agree. Seider is probably the most interesting one because people are often hesitant to pay up for defensemen, so they may leave him off. So if you are going to do it, that's an interesting one to throw in. So, all right, let's talk about the biggest favorite of the slate, which is the St. Louis Blues, who are hosting the Ottawa Senators. I'm normally a pretty big Senators guy. I probably overplay them in general, but tough to do tonight. I'm struggling to get on board against a solid defensive team in the Blues. My opinion, probably to scratch them off the list entirely. Do you have any interest whatsoever in the Senators tonight?
Well, I didn't initially, but also we got Bennington in that. And he's struggled this year. I mean, let's face it. Look, this is a great spot for him to turn around as any against essentially, a one-line team in a game that St. Louis can control the matchups and the pace. I don't know. I think, Norris, Kachuk, they're decent players, and St. Louis as a team, they give up a lot of scoring chances, even on home ice. I think among all these teams on this slate, they've got the highest expected goals against. I could be overthinking it, but if you're looking for, a line that's capable of, putting a couple in at a somewhat reasonable price, I think you could do a lot worse than Ottawa won. But for me, really, I'm more focused on the St. Louis side.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, as far as pure projections, and I think they're based on everything you mentioned of St. Louis not being as strong for the season, Tkachuk, Chabot and Norris all project pretty well in a point per dollar. They're all going to be, mid to low single digits. So you've sold me a little more. I mean, Bennington has been playing better lately. We'll get to goalies at the end of the show. So I hear you. I'm a little higher than I was when we started talking. I don't think I'll quite get there, but I definitely hear you there. So let's move to St. Louis, as I mentioned before, minus 350, the highest favorite on the slate. What interest do you have there?
It's really the second line, since they'll be able to attack the second, third, fourth line of Ottawa. Whereas you're likely going to see O'Reilly be taking on Norris, Kachuk. It's tough. I don't know how they do it, but O'Reilly, you look at the numbers for these guys and they're just atrocious. It's all even strength that is just scoring the power play. And the problem is that the power play is comprised of essentially all four lines.
Yep.
So it's hard to correlate that. But regardless, I don't think you could really go wrong with any of the top three lines really for St. Louis. I mean, with Saad getting bumped down and Barbashev going up, it's more looking like O'Reilly's like a checking line. But it's really the Thomas, Tarasenko, that line is the one that I like to attack. And that's obviously the line with the most talent.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, it's kind of maddening from a fantasy perspective because of what you mentioned. They spread across 3 different lines on the power play, so you can't really correlate particularly well. So that makes it difficult. Ryan O'Reilly was the one I had start as just, his numbers are shockingly bad. He's still getting pretty good usage, but his numbers just are not great. And he doesn't seem to have a ton of upside. So as a whole, I mean, given, how big of a favorite they are and the team totals, et cetera, I'm probably a little under just because it's difficult to know where it's coming from. I completely get it. If you want to go with, power play stack, make sure Tarasenko's in there. Torrey Krug's kind of the power play specialist on the power, quarterbacking their power play. I get it. He's pretty affordable at 4.7. He can go really quiet on nights where he's not contributing power play points just because he doesn't block as many shots as some of the other elite defensemen. At times his, SOG, his shots on goal can be pretty variant. So anyways, completely fine with targeting St. Louis. I'll probably be a little under the field overall.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, the way I would probably approach it is Falks is more expensive, but he kind of, if you want that second line,
Yep.
I'm not leaving Tarasenko off it, but play Thomas and then Tarasenko, and then with probably Falk, since the 2/3 of that will be in that second unit. But you could go either which way, and I like all three lines. We'll end up seeing, when it comes down to it, how much exposure I have, but they're still in a great spot. So it's definitely a tricky one, but it's one that I'm not going to completely fade here.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to another good real life game, maybe not as much for fantasy purposes. Dallas takes on Nashville in Nashville. Preds are listed as a 130 favorite. This is the only game on the slate with a 5.5 over under. So clearly goals will be at a premium here. Take me through the star side of it. I'm a Preds fan. I'm a little biased. I don't see a ton here just due to the low team total. But there may be a few things to pick and choose. What do you see on the Dallas side of the ice?
Well, I'm sure as much as the resident Preds fan at Rotogrinders that it really comes down to the power play, or the penalty kill. How many times is Nashville are they capable of staying out of the penalty box? If they are, then they should probably control this game. And Dallas isn't really that sexy of a team to target here, but they do have a good power play, and it's really going to come down to, can Nashville stay out of the box? They can't. I like that top line for Dallas. Really, as much as as bad as they've been this season, that second line is I can't. How low can Jamie Benn's price get? It seems like a trap. Obviously Giordano, he's been a disappointment this year too, but they still got talent, and obviously Ben probably peaked at his career. But I mean, it's mind boggling how, this team is just 2 years removed from going to the Stanley Cup, and it seems like they just can't get anything done together. But you got to like that top power play unit, because Pavelski, Heinz, Robertson, they've got some good numbers, and they've been producing more so at home. But again, it's if your Preds can stay out of the box.
Yeah, and I was actually shocked in pulling up lineup HQ. We have the Stars top line at around 10%, which is one of the highest pure line percentages that we have, which is more than I would have expected. So,
well, the price has come down a little bit. So,
right.
Not to interrupt you there, but that's probably a lot to do with it.
Right. And I mean, they kind of average out to around that 6,000 range. So if you're going with more of a balanced build, I completely get it. And to your point, I mean, power plays where they're going to make their money if they do go off tonight. So, all right, flipping to the Nashville side, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll agree or disagree what you say about my beloved Preds.
Well, I mean, I hate to be dogging, but the Preds are a one-line team, man. Yep. And that depth is scary if they're gonna try and make a push here, especially come playoff time. But that's neither here nor there. The Forsberg Duchesne combo, they're back with looks like Johansson, and he's cheap, but it's always a trap. Not a guy I typically play, but again, is on the power play with Forsberg, with Duchesne. Those are the main guys I'm going to target. And then obviously your boy Josie is always a strong play.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think it comes down to Duchesne and Forsberg. Johansson, sure, if you're looking for a 1 assist, 2 shots on goal game, almost at best, you can throw him in there for salary relief. He is 3.1K. So I get it. Yossi, absolutely love him. I don't know that I can get there tonight. There's just plenty of other places to pay up. He's always a candidate for any sort of bonus on DK, shots blocked, shots on goal, points. I just see this being a 3-2 type game, so it's going to be tough. You really need to concentrate the production, and so sure, Nashville 1 could get 2 goals, but they're definitely not a priority for me tonight.
Do you like either side of the goalies in this one? I kind of like Saros.
I will, yeah, and I think when we get to goalies, what I have marked there is potentially either of them. So if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I think you can split because of what I was saying. I don't see either team going off for 4 goals. So if you're on the winning side of it, you could absolutely have a solid goaltending performance. So absolutely, I mean, with this one being at 5.5 goals, I mean, it's the only one of the slate. I think both goalies are definitely in play. All right, moving on, we've got the Rangers taking on the Wild, and Minnesota is a 140 favorite. This one actually opened up at 5.5, quickly moved to 6. I think there may be a little value on the under there at this point, but similar to above, I think this is probably a better real life than fantasy, but I think there's probably some more offensive goodness here than the Nashville game. What do you like on the Rangers side?
Yeah, it's really this is another kind of head scratcher. You know, obviously you got the Rangers team that has awful numbers at 5-on-5, but they can score on the power play. Not as good on the road as they are at home. They're actually the biggest surprise to me because nothing's really changed except their coach this year. And yet they got out to a hot start. But it's always tough fading Zibanejad, Kreider, but Minnesota, they'll be able to dictate their matchups. They've got a shutdown line. So if anything, I would maybe turn to Strome or Panarin, but you really kind of need them to get a lot of power play time to go off in this one for me, because I think Minnesota is a strong overall team. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but yeah, for me, I probably prefer that second line and mainly just Strome and Panarin paired with Fox, hoping for that power play time similar to Dallas. But aside from that, not really too high in the Rangers thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, and looking at the prices here, we've got Zibanejad at 7.3, Kreider at 6.8. That's a pretty tough ask given, the other high quality options. GPPs, sure, you can throw some darts. I agree. I think Panarin price per dollar, I mean, the 1,000 that you'd save over Zibanejad, he's probably the priority. So I agree. I mean, if you want to do kind of a mini stack of Panarin, Fox, Strome, that saves you a little bit of salary. Strome, not that dissimilar from Johansson above, more of a pass first. He shoots it a little bit more often. So I agree. I think the best, point per dollar plays is Ryan Strome there. Even he's probably not a huge priority on such a large slate.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really going to be about the matchups, and that because that second line is likely going to see the top line for Minnesota, and that's just a line that can see a lot of action go both ways. But yeah, not that Joel Eriksson is anything really to get to be afraid of. He is that kind of shutdown guy with Greenway and Foligno. So it's not as good of a match as it could have been if they were on home ice.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, the Wild will be able to dictate matchups. I mean, what do you like on the Wild side? And so I've currently got it lineup HQ filtering towards top projected from a raw points perspective, and Kirill Kaprizov is actually the 4th highest projected scorer of the night. Do you think that's too high, or do you think that Minnesota could have plenty of scoring opportunities?
I think that, I mean, if Shesterkin was a net, I think we might have a different take, or we might both agree that it's just not really worth picking on him because he's been having a fantastic season. But with Georgiev, not as good of a goalie by any means. Minnesota on home ice, they get to dictate the pace, the matchups. I do have quite a bit of interest in that top line for Minnesota. I don't think they'll be, they'll be definitely be one of these victims of 11 game slate where I don't think their ownership will get out of hand, but they do have potential, likely going up against the second, the third lines for the Rangers that aren't that strong defensively. And then you could even turn down to that second line with Fiala, Boldy. They've had some, strong games here, especially recently, and they won't break the bank, especially recently. Fiala, I mean, we've seen him up to almost 7K on DraftKings, but now he's down to 4,300. Decent stat or decent, combo. Boldy, Fiala could go overlooked.
Yeah, and coming into it, I mean, my initial read on the Wild was definitely GPP. I think I even wrote him up in my slate summary as, a great GPP option. it's interesting that Kaprizov's his current ownership is projected at 12%. A lot of that's probably driven by his high projection that we have. So if they do end up being that, sneaky stack that's not actually that sneaky, I'll probably stay away. However, what's nice is, other than Kaprizov, when you look, Zuccarello, Hartman, they are pretty cheap at 4.9 and 5.1. So really everyone on the team besides Kaprizov is pretty cheap. So I do think that they will be more popular than I originally thought, just because they are a favorite. You mentioned the goalie. If this was Shesterkin, I'd probably just scratch this off together. Georgiev, he's not terrible, but it is a huge downgrade there. So
yeah, and look, I think you could play, but you could still make a case for him, because I think he's going to see a ton of shots. And he's not the worst goalie on the slate by any means. The one I am concerned about would be Cam Talbot, just because I mentioned that at even strength, the Rangers just don't seem to do anything, and especially on the road. And they're going to have tough matchups. They're going to really need to be getting a ton of shots on the power play, and that's not something I'm really excited about when playing a goalie. So not really excited about Talbot, but Georgiev for cheap goalie, probably the cheapest I would go on this slate.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, another what I would describe as good real life game. I mentioned earlier, I could see this one going a lot of different ways. We've got Tampa Bay taking on Winnipeg in Winnipeg. Lightning are a 170 favorite with a 6-goal over under. What do you like in the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions?
I think you gotta like them here. I mean, Winnipeg is a team that takes too many penalties. They really kind of get bailed out night after night by Hellebuyck. And yeah, Hellebuck's in net, but Tampa Bay, they're back-to-back Cup champions for a reason. And they just, seem like they have skipped a beat. Kucherov missed some time, but he's come back and he's been awesome. They're expensive, that top line. But again, they're probably going to see a lot of Scheifele, and he get that top line for Winnipeg is, it's a solid line. There's a talented, but it's not necessarily the league's best shutdown line. And then also you could flip down to that second line with Stamkos, Killorn for that power play exposure. Winnipeg takes too many penalties. I think there's a lot to like, and I actually kind of glad that they bumped up Cirelli onto that second line, because it's really just going to be a top 6 battle. Winnipeg just doesn't really seem to play a lot of their bottom tertiary lines. So I like this game in general. I like the Tampa Bay side a lot more, and it's really the top 6 for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think their coach is smarter than I am, but I do think Cirelli getting bumped up and Stamkos playing on the wing rather than center, I think that makes a lot of sense. Allows him to shoot the puck over there. I'm probably just going to highlight or target the power play one, like you said. So Stamkos, Point, Kucherov, they're expensive. I do not think they will carry high ownership tonight. We'll see what lineup HQ has for them. Yeah, exactly. They have them at, in that 5 to 6% range. So I do think they'll go over-owned relative to a normal slate. So Point, Kucherov, Stamkos, and then if you want to throw in Hedman, yes, he's expensive, but similar to Yossi before, he can always get any of the bonuses, assists, block shots, shots on goal. So that's definitely where I would be looking. All right, what about on the Winnipeg side? This is a team that can score goals. Obviously, they're taking on the Lightning, one of the better goalies. What interest level do you have in Winnipeg at home?
It's tough for me. I mean, obviously they are getting healthier. Would like to see Ehlers maybe bump up to that second line. But obviously he's, coming back from an injury. He's still getting some ice time, especially in his last game, which is interesting. But it's tough for me, because I just don't like to pick on Tampa Bay, whether they're at home or on the road. And that they're going to see a ton of ice time. They're top 6, so I don't really see how any one of these particular lines for Winnipeg is really going to, bust out or break through. Do we know if Vasilevsky's in net yet?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was about to look it up on my end.
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, assuming he is. I mean, he just never. I think I put this in my slate summary last week. it's been X number of games since he gave up more than 2 goals or 3. He just never gets blown up. And even games, I feel like I've played him lately where he'll give up 2 goals in the first period and you're like, oh, here it is. And then he just shuts him down for the rest of the game. So I agree, yes, they could be sneaky from an ownership perspective. If you wanted to play Kyle Connor, I mean, he can have 5, 6, 7, 8 shots on goal in any game. I don't think it's worth targeting heavily on such a large slate.
Yeah, and that is a good point. He's always in play, and he could certainly, he can be used as a one-off. You can play him with Dubois, but yeah, Connor's the one that might stand out a little bit. But again, it's really hard to attack Tampa Bay when they're going with this top-heavy approach.
Yep. All right, 2 more games to go. Let's move on to Anaheim taking on the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks are a slight favorite at minus 120, 6 goal over under. So Vegas expects this one to be pretty close. I think I definitely have more interest on the Chicago side, but let's start with Anaheim. Anything standing out to you for the Ducks?
Yeah, not particularly. My Ducks, I got to a strong start, but they're slowly starting to fade, and you can kind of see it. Look, I'm not scared of anyone on Chicago. Taze is a shell of his former self, but definitely more interest in that side of it. I mean, the top line, Zegras, Raquel, Raquel's been coming on strong. Could be potentially traded here, but yeah, that's probably the only line I would play. It never really light it up. And while this game I think has some sneaky kind of back and forth potential, it's just really difficult where you're going to find it on the Ducks. And you look at the Chicago side, where I think you're excited about the top line as much as I am, but from the Ducks perspective, yeah, they're going to get Getzlaf back, but he hasn't been doing much and kind of spread out. Whereas they had, that Zegras, Raquel, Henrique line that was working for them, but they're still appearing to go with that kind of spread out approach here. So not really in love with the Ducks in this one. More so interested in the Hawks.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just don't think you need to get cute with the Ducks. Yes, they could score some goals. You just don't necessarily know where they're coming from and if you're going to get enough concentration for it to pay off. On the flip side, I mean, you alluded to it already. The first line, and particularly Patrick Kane, we've got him on lineup HQ as, the highest point per dollar sort of the expensive options. He's only 6.9K. He's projected at over 15 points on DraftKings. So I think he will definitely be popular. However, I think he's probably worth it. He's got multi-point upside. He can get shots on net. And, while he's, moderately priced at 6.9, his line mates, if we pull this up here, you save some, especially with Strome. So Strome's only 4.1K. Yeah, he's not going to shoot the puck a ton, but, there's always a chance he can pick up a few assists on, either on the power play or even strength. To Brinkett, more of a shooting threat. 6.2 feels like a fair price for him. And they all correlate on the power play, which is nice. And then if you're wanting a value, Tyler Johnson has come back for the last week or two. He is on the number 1 power play. He's either min price or near min price. Let's find him. 2,600, right? So, he's definitely a throw in if you're wanting to get some salary relief and stack up the number 1 power play for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, it's really that top line. I mean, yeah, like you said, you could use him as a one-off. You could plug him in there with that top power play. I will say that I'm a little torn because the Ducks are without Lundestrom. He's really kind of come on as that kind of penalty killer, somewhat shutdown type guy. It'll be interesting to see how the Ducks can, kill off penalties without him. And obviously with Getzlaf banged up too. So maybe whereas I might not target the Ducks power play, maybe this one is this is a different story here with the top line for Chicago. Just load them up and hopefully they can maybe break through at even strength in on the power play.
Absolutely. All right, last game of the night, another pretty good one from a real life perspective. We're loaded up with quality games just from a viewer point of view. So we've got Washington taking on Calgary. The Flames are one of the hottest teams in the league. That was intentional. And let's start with Washington. Calgary did play last night against Edmonton, which is never an easy task of trying to chase them around all night. So I think that gives Washington a little bit more appeal. Calgary's obviously been, good defensively. I haven't seen who's in net. I think Markstrom, I believe, played last night, so I would assume he will not go tonight.
I'm pretty sure it's Vladar.
Okay. So given that, does that bump your interest level in the Capitals?
This one might be the hardest one. Obviously Calgary, they've got a lot of games coming up, and they play their first in they've got like a bunch of back-to-backs because they've got some games to make up. And it was interesting. I think I saw a tweet earlier today from Daryl Sutter, kind of saying, well, my team looks tired. And that's never a good thing.
I didn't see
especially
that.
when you take on Washington. And that was the first game. They've got like 5 games in 7 days or something crazy like that. So that's never a good sign. Regardless, they've played well in back-to-backs this year, if my memory serves me correctly. And then, with Washington, it's always hard fading Ovi. Even in a spot like this, but he's really kind of where I would look to. If you need a cheap line, Backstrom, Oshie is as cheap as it's probably ever been, along with Mantha. So that I have some interest in that combination as well. But I just don't know how much on 11 game slate do we want to be picking on Calgary, even on a back-to-back, and even with their backup goalie in there. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm largely with you. I think Oshie is intriguing either as a one-off or just kind of value. He's on the number 1 power play, 3.6K. He won't, he'll probably move up to more of that 5,000 range in the next few weeks as he, gets back into form. Definitely not a priority. You mentioned Backstrom as well. If you are looking for a little 2-man stack of Backstrom, Oshie, both of whom are on the number 1 power play in the second line, for $7,000 for both of them combined, I guess it's worth, because at that point you're not needing more than, a goal, between the line. So I don't know that I'll get to Ovechkin, just like you said, that the matchup's just tough. Same thing with Carlson. He can be hit or miss, and I think tonight could be one of those misses. So if I'm looking to go this route, I'll probably go value just so if it flames out, it won't be that bad.
Yeah. And then on the flip side for Calgary, it'd be the top line. If you want to pay up for them, but again, it's always alarming when the coach says, team's looking tired, especially if, with a big game against Edmonton. But it's just that time of the year, and that's when it matters. Early in the season, I don't really put much weight into back-to-backs, but at this point of the year, Calgary's been grinding. I could easily see Daryl Sutter go for one of his classic 2-1 games. Either side could win it because Washington's not bad on the flip side either. So I just a little more hesitant for the Flames than I necessarily would be. But we'll see ultimately what happens once the puck drops.
Yeah, and I mean the quote you mentioned is interesting. Originally, I had that top line circled, and they're relatively affordable as we can see on Lineup HQ. I mean they're around that $6,000 or less. So a normal night, I think they would be pretty intriguing at home. The back-to-back plus what you mentioned. I mean, it's possible they see 17 or 18 minutes instead of the 19, 20, and those extra shifts could be the difference. So I agree. I think they're still very much in play, just given their talent level and their form lately. I think Tyler Toffoli is an interesting one-off at 3.8. He's been scoring a lot. I was looking at his shots on goal totals, and the efficiency is completely unsustainable. He's been scoring on almost everything he shoots, but he is a sniper and he's on the power.
Been that way his whole career.
Right. I mean, could he do it again? Absolutely. So if you're looking for either a one-off or, kind of a mini stack for the power play, you could definitely throw Tyler Toffoli in there. especially, if you're trying to get off some of the chalk like Vrana or others. I think he's definitely a way to do that. So, all right, let's talk goalies. I know we quickly hit on a few of these as we're going through the games. Any particular favorite options at goalie? I know we mentioned the Nashville Dallas game, potentially Saros. Anyone else stand out to you from a goalie perspective?
Jari is the one that I'm really kind of intrigued with. I think there's a lot of upside there. And obviously it's a dangerous matchup, but I think Pittsburgh, could pull that off. And there's a chance he could see, 35 shots. So he's probably the one. Obviously I like Saros. Georgiev for GVP flyer. He's probably as cheap as I'd go tonight. And then up at the top, I kind of like Kemper a little bit because New Jersey, they can shoot. And then, Fleury I have as in that mix as well.
Yeah, you kind of saw me. The Jari thing is interesting. He wasn't on my radar, but I absolutely get it. I mean, we talked about when Florida pours it on. I mean, they can absolutely do that. But I mean, they put plenty of shots on net. So, if they're not scoring and they put up 40 shots, he could absolutely have a massive game. I think I'm a little higher on Bennington. I've seen enough of his current form. He's been really bad all year. I'm thinking maybe he's flashing some of that form. I mentioned the last few games. I think he's 2-0-1, had a shutout and gave up 2 goals in the other few games. So I think he's probably the safest option, huge favorite. Does he have the upside? I don't know. So if you're looking for upside, probably not your guy. If you're looking for, giving up 2 gols and picking up a win with 25 saves, he's probably as safe an option
and I'd play him over Campbell. I'd play him.
Campbell's looked. Both goalies for the Leafs. I mean, their defense, they struggle. So I agree. I think Campbell will probably be a little overowned relative to what I expect will happen tonight. All right, let's wrap it up. Favorite stack, overall, and then we can talk about maybe a more contrarian option.
Yeah, I think, just based, off that morning skate, obviously it's Toronto, but outside of Toronto 1, I'm really liking the potential for Chicago's top line in this one. Curious to see the ownership, but that one as a whole stack is definitely intriguing.
Yeah, I agree. My initial read as kind of contrarian was actually Minnesota, but with the ownership that we were showing, I don't know that they will be. So I agree. Chicago is a good one. I think Vegas could be a little sneaky, all things considered. We talked about kind of that second line of Marchessault and company. So I think Vegas would be another one I would throw in that should have single-digit ownership. So, all right. Anything else you want to add as far as the slate? Anything else before we get out of here?
It's just glad to be back. Hopefully we're a little rusty, but hopefully, once we get back and we're doing these every Tuesday and Thursday, we'll get kind of back in the swing of things the way things used to be. But it's an 11 game slate. It's a massive one. It's a lot to like, and hope everyone has good luck.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.